Hi, everyone. We are here with the amazing Tyler Rowling, who is a anti-diet dietitian, a certified intuitive eating counselor, a spiritual wellness coach, and she's the founder of Food, Body, and Soul. And I'll have to give her this credit. She was my inspiration for taking Year of You and making it virtual last year. So thank you, Tyler, and thanks for being here with us today and all that good stuff.
Yes, Kelly, it's so amazing. It's such a joy to be here and so glad that, we're all here to inspire one another, just walking each other home. So, yeah, it's beautiful.
Absolutely. And yeah, I'm really excited to talk about what we're going to dive into today. And I'm going to post your recording from last year on the landing page so people can watch more of you and learn more about, the foundations of intuitive eating. And we're going to kind of go into a little bit more of like the nuances of it today. But will you start by telling people a little bit more about you and your journey to what you're doing in the world today?
Yeah, I would love to share my story. So I'm actually in my office here at San Diego State University. In addition to my coaching practice, I work full time at the university, and I've been here for 6 years. And what I do is I counsel students on nutrition and intuitive eating. And, my eating disorder, the whole reason why I got into this line of work was because when I was in college, I struggled with an eating disorder and using exercise as punishment and sort of compulsive exercise. Um, and I was able to work with a dietitian, an anti-diet dietitian, certified intuitive eating counselor when I was a student. So life kind of came full circle. And now that's what I'm doing at the university, in addition to my coaching practice, which I was inspired to start because of the work that I was doing here at San Diego State. And yeah, it is my belief that eating disorders, disordered eating stems from a disconnection from our truth. It stems from a disconnection from our authentic selves because somewhere in our journey, we internalized this belief that there's something wrong with us and that we need to be fixed. When in actuality, it's things like diet culture that has been carried on generation after generation, whether that's a parent who you saw constantly dieting. For me, it was both my parents. I saw them dieting, bouncing from diet to diet, body shaming themselves all the time. And as a child, we don't realize how much of the messages we internalize from our parents. So if you see your mom talking negatively about herself when you're 7, 8 years old, that's going to impact the way that you perceive yourself, questioning your worth, right? Um, so yeah, I'm just super passionate about helping women peel back those layers of societal conditioning to remember who they are, to get to the root of who they are, and trusting oneself again. Yeah.
Yeah. So beautiful. I love it. And I struggled with similar things as a young woman, for literally like 10 years. And I was so disconnected from myself. And for me, it was actually finding a connection to myself that helped me to get away from that, thankfully, because I didn't tell anybody that any of that was going on. It was so shameful and secretive and all of that. And yeah, so I think that kind of leads into one of the things we're going to talk about today, which is improving your interoceptive awareness. Because when I got connected to myself, I was able to have this deeper connection with my body, to what doing certain things to my body felt like, which helped me to move away from that. So do you want to explain what interoceptive awareness even means?
Yeah, I would love that. Yeah. So interoceptive awareness is our ability to perceive bodily sensations, such as hunger and fullness, but also our ability to perceive emotions in the body, right? So when we experience anxiety, for instance, or stress, where do we feel that sensation in our body? Where do we hold that energy, if you will? Maybe it's a tightness in the chest or a churning in the stomach. And all of these things, it's learning our body's language, right? Because so often we are stuck in our head space thinking about the next thing on our to-do list or the next thing that we got to do or something that happened in the past that we're ruminating on and obsessing over, trying to fix or gain some sense of control versus being fully here in the present moment. And there's different practices that help us drop into the present moment, such as yoga, mindfulness, meditation. And interoceptive awareness being, it's like building a muscle. It takes practice, but it's so helpful because it provides us with a wisdom, a bodily wisdom that I don't think our culture necessarily teaches us to trust. If anything, we're taught messages to not trust what our body tells us, to rely on things outside of us to tell us that we're okay. And so really it's bringing the agency that you can trust yourself and you can trust what your body's telling you and honor your body by listening to it.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. Obviously people develop their disordered eating habits, whether it's an eating disorder or just disordered eating of any type, or over exercising, that sort of a thing. This disconnection from the body gets developed for maybe different reasons. And then different things can cause us, like, for example, I had bulimia, right? I would feel an emotion come up, and rather than sitting with it and feeling it in my body, I would eat a bunch of food and then I'd throw it up, So what I wanted to ask you was, is there a different entryway that you would guide your clients into based on the type of disordered eating or relationship with their body that they have? Or is it always something similar?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Totally. And, I'm so glad you asked that, because for many who aren't familiar with listening to their body, it feels scary. And we also have to be mindful of being trauma informed with these practices, because there's a book called The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk, and he talks about how we can store trauma in the body. So I also just want to put that out there, that we have to be really careful when we're working with others and improving their interoceptive awareness, because sometimes it feels very unsafe for us to drop into our body and can trigger past wounds. So before even going into interoceptive awareness, I always like to first address the cognitive side of things. So addressing diet mentality, because if we're able to gain awareness about our thoughts, challenge our automatic negative thoughts and see them just as thoughts, not as facts, see which ones are serving us, which ones are toxic, quote unquote, or rooted in fear. And then once we develop that foundation of becoming the observer of our experience, starting with the mind, then we begin to drop into the body more through things such as guided meditations, where I guide clients through like a body scan, more or less, where you do a body scan starting from head to toe and just noticing the sensations in your body, noticing, some of the questions that I like to ask are, notice any sensation in your body. Let's say we'll go with the chest feeling constricted or tight, like that's anxiety, right? And just sitting there and breathing into that space, starting to get curious about it, bringing a compassionate curiosity. Can we sit in the discomfort? Can we still be the observer and compassionate witness to this very physical, visceral feeling that we're experiencing? And can we ground ourselves? So grounding is super important too. You can ground the body by, visualizing roots coming out of the bottom of your feet, whether you're sitting in a chair or maybe you're sitting on the floor and you imagine roots growing out of the bottom of your spine, connecting you to the core of the earth. Or maybe it's things like breath work, like box breathing, that helps to activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the soothing, the calm. So box breathing might be inhaling for 4 seconds, holding for 4 seconds, exhaling for 4 seconds, holding for 4 seconds, and repeating that for at least a minute or two. And you'll start to notice your heart rate go down and things like that, to where it's easier for you to bring curiosity to what you're experiencing. And so we talked about how we can ground. We start by grounding. And if someone doesn't feel safe entering, their body, then starting with the cognitive first, just the thoughts, and becoming curious about those. And then once that feels more solid, then moving into the body, dropping out of the mind into the body, connecting the two. And then it's almost like you begin to have a conversation with that sensation in your body. You can almost visualize that it's a separate entity or a character, even, if that helps. There's a poem by Rumi that I just absolutely love. And it's called "This Being Human is a Guest House." I might have even brought this up on our last interview because that's how much I refer to this poem. But essentially what it says is, this being human is a guest house. Anger, fear, sadness, joy. Invite them all in. Invite them in for tea. So I think this radical acceptance piece, which another favorite teacher of mine, her name is Tara Brach. She's a Buddhist meditation philosopher. She's amazing. She has podcasts. I would highly recommend her teachings. But radical acceptance and curiosity. So questions might sound like, if you could give this part of this sensation that you're feeling in your body a color, what color would it be? What texture is it? Is it cloudy? Is it murky? What shape is it? If this part of your body could speak to you, what would it say? What does it want you to know? And so you begin to have a conversation with it. Yeah, does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And it's just like cultivating this relationship with your body that if you've been numbing yourself for years in any given way, it's going to take time and work. And those, I think those questions are so powerful. And just the little sequence of things that you gave us, so important. And as you're listing those things, I was like, that is like how I came back. But, I didn't know that I was doing that.
Yeah.
I realized it as it was happening, but I didn't recognize like how things are working in the moment, right? It's always like looking back that we're like, wow, that was like so powerful. So the fact that you can teach these tools to people and help them to connect is so beautiful. And do you want to explain, if it's not really clear to people yet, like how this interoceptive awareness really plays into intuitive eating, like how once you cultivate that, you can have that intuitive eating piece?
Yes. Thank you for bringing us back to that. There's a tool called the Hunger Fullness Scale. And when we talk about using interoceptive awareness when it comes to eating, that's our ability to perceive hunger and fullness and what that feels like. For many, we think that hunger and fullness, it's all or nothing. I'm either hungry or I'm full, but it exists on a spectrum. And so the Hunger Fullness Scale is a great tool for you to begin to bring that curiosity to, like, what does that feeling of subtle hunger feel like to me? Because lots of us go about our day not checking in with our body and how it's feeling. And maybe that means not eating, whether that's purposely restricting food intake because there's some just purposely restricting food intake for weight loss or whatever reason it may be, or you're just super busy and not paying attention to how your body's feeling. Next thing you know, you're that hangry feeling, that ravenously hungry feeling, really low blood sugar. And so it's only natural response that our body then wants to reach for those energy dense foods that are quick and easy. So then we immediately, it's this boomerang effect. where we end up at a 0-1 on the hunger fullness scale. We're that hangry, ravenous, and then we overcompensate. We end up at the 9-10, overly full, uncomfortably full, food coma, need to unbutton your pants sort of full, both of which are physiologically uncomfortable. So by improving our interoceptive awareness, we pick up on the subtle messages that our body sends us so that we don't end up in these extremes. And there's more a sense of control as well, where we get to trust our body's wisdom and what it's telling us. So maybe that subtle hunger feels like just having repetitive thoughts about food. Sometimes just having thoughts about food is an indication that you need to eat something, or that you've been restricting food intake. So it's only natural for your mind to start obsessing about it, which is why diets don't work as well. There's many reasons why diets don't work. But yeah, I kind of jumped around there, but I want to bring it back to interoceptive awareness and intuitive eating. And then on the flip side of that is fullness. So while you're eating, being mindful and present with your food. Now we're also human. We do have busy lives, and we're not always going to get it perfect. That's not the point. The point is to bring that intention to your day-to-day life. Just having that intention of, I'm going to start listening to my body more. That within itself will increase your awareness about your experience when it comes to food and hunger and fullness. Now, I would not recommend someone to use the hunger fullness scale. You can Google this, by the way. I also highly recommend, there's this workbook. It's called Intuitive Eating by Evelyn Tribole and Elise Resch. And there's more hands-on sort of activities you can do to improve interoceptive awareness. But yeah, the hunger fullness scale, if you see that you start to use it as a dieting tool, as a, okay, I'm only going to eat when I'm at a 4 on the hunger fullness scale. That's the only time I can eat. And you start to gain those rigid rules, and it's almost, you bring that fear mentality to the space, then I would say that's a red flag. Let's pump the brakes. Let's take a step back from the hunger fullness scale and instead go back to those automatic negative thoughts that you're having. Let's explore that more, because anytime we start to have control and rigidity around something, that's a flag that there's a cognitive distortion going on. There's all or nothing thinking, which stems from anxiety and fear. So let's address that before we move on. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I love that. That's great. And that workbook looks really awesome. I think you mentioned it last time as well.
Yeah, I probably did.
Yeah. So cool. This is like kind of maybe left fieldish, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So hopefully I don't throw you off, because I've had a lot of conversations lately about, ancestral patterns when it comes to food and inner child healing, all of that stuff.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, how do you go about helping someone who they recognize that this is it's picked up from childhood? It might be even going way back, like a few ancestors back. Like, how do you go about helping someone start to heal from that? Because that is deep, right? Like, yeah. And our stuff, like we talked about, our stuff is it was produced in childhood too, but yeah.
Yeah. I love that you brought up the ancestral. We talk about generational trauma and just coming back to being trauma informed, and recognizing that we are made up of ancestral DNA that's been, generations. We think about, when it comes to dieting and body image, my mom's mom and her mom's mom and so on, all struggled with food and addictions. And I believe that compassion is so key when doing this work. When we begin to choose the path of growth, and we decide, I want to know myself. To know thyself means to do the work, to dive deep into ancestral wounding and family history and how that impacts and shapes our behavior. So going easy on ourselves, I think too, is so important. Because for me, I know when I started to wake up to the conditioning that shaped my being, it was overwhelming at first. I was like, this is a lot to take on, you know? So I think that's where the grounding piece is so key, to create that sense of safety within yourself before you begin to do this work. So key. And recognizing, sometimes I think we become fixed on this idea that we need to be fixed. You know, there's almost this addiction to fixing ourselves. And it starts off as great intention, right? Like we want to improve ourselves. But then when we feel like we improved one thing, we jump onto the next thing that's quote unquote wrong with us. And it's almost this addiction to fixing oneself, or addiction to trauma, or addiction to emotional states. And so there's this balance that I think is important when doing this work. And that is the balance of doing the work and also fun, play, compassion. You know, laughter and humor is so medicinal too. So we can cry, we can experience anger when we wake up to these things. And while we're waking up to these feelings of anger and sadness, can we also invite in compassionate understanding and acceptance? Sometimes it's not so much forgiveness, it's acceptance that we need to experience first before we can step into that feeling of forgiveness. Yeah, those are my thoughts on that. I hope that answered the question.
Absolutely.
But I love that. Yeah.
The acceptance piece, you know, I did a post about this, I think a couple of weeks ago, and this is something I've been coming back to a lot in my own life. But if there's any way that we want to be feeling in our life, like you talk about manifestation, or like creating the reality that you want to see for yourself, truly the first step is accepting, like, this is where I am right here, right now. This was my past.
Right.
Maybe it was kind of shitty.
Yeah.
That's okay. Because it's not real anymore. Like, that was there. Of course, it's still aspects of it still live within our body and our emotions, like we talked about, but just finding that acceptance, like here we are. Right. And I can accept this. And when I do, that is when like the field of pure potentiality or infinite possibility really opens up. Like energetically, we become magnetic. So
not getting sucked into the past. I love Joe Dispenza's work too, when he talks about how as long as we are living in the present moment as if it were from the past, we're blocking ourselves from the range of possibilities that are available to us. You know, and he talks about how things from our past, if they bring up emotion, the goal is to relate to our past in a way where it feels like wisdom, where it doesn't necessarily have a charge to it. It's not positive or negative. It's kind of this neutral, just like I gained so much wisdom from that.
Yeah.
The like equanimity.
And like almost like it wasn't, I have this with certain aspects of my past, like my eating disorder and stuff. Like I look at it and I don't feel, it's like it's an out of body experience. Like that was somebody else kind of, but I feel like compassion and wisdom for what she learned and all of that. So
I just got full body chills. I love that so much. It was like, that was a part of you, and you've quantum leaped since then. You've leaped, you've changed, you know, and grown, and having compassion for every part of our chapter, every part of our journey, I should say. Yeah.
And without what we went through, we wouldn't be sitting here right now. It's so powerful,
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I
Turning
love
your
it.
pain into purpose, right? Yeah.
Helping others. And I do believe that I don't know if my soul came in here to have an eating disorder and learn these things and
Right.
teach it to people, but I know that my soul chose to have different experiences to help me turn my pain into purpose, as you said so beautifully. So
Yeah.
just perspective. And
Yeah. I also hold that belief that our souls chose this life. Like, I hold the belief that my soul chose my parents. My soul chose to have a mom who was addicted to alcohol, and there was substance abuse, and, the traumas that I experienced in my upbringing as part of my path. Um, and sometimes when we can look at our lives in that way, uh, again, that's that acceptance piece.
makes it a lot easier
So
to
much easier.
accept
You're
it.
not fighting it. Yeah.
like why did this have to happen to me? Why couldn't my life be like this? Like, well, maybe it was meant to be like this so that I could be doing bigger things and all of that.
Yeah.
So
And this makes me think of something, if I can share,
please. Yeah.
when we talk about feeling emotions and interoceptive awareness, right? And while we're doing the work of intuitive eating and exploring our relationship to food in our body, part of that is seeing how society and our parents have influenced our relationship to food in our body. And those emotions of anger and sadness will come up, and that's so human. And I think it's important not to bypass that. And in The Body Keeps the Score, that book I was talking about by Bessel van der Kolk, who's MD and studies trauma and the body, and using somatic therapy to, what he says, discharge emotions. So our bodies keep the score, meaning our bodies hold on to emotions, and if not properly, quote unquote, discharged, then we're more easily triggered. We become flooded with emotion easier, and it's almost as if we're living in the past. So, how can we safely discharge those emotions of anger and sadness? And in my practice with clients, movement has been huge, moving the energy, like wherever you're feeling that in your body, that sensation of anger. How can you express that through movement? Not about technique and being a professional dancer at all, but how can you begin to embody and express that emotion versus just holding on to it? How can you let it out? And I think there's a lot of power in that when we can do that in a safe container and be witnessed by someone that we trust. That's like, I can hold this space for you right now. You can scream, you can yell, you can cry, punch the wall in a safe way, hopefully, like whatever you got to do. But that's so powerful. And that to me is alchemy. And I love referring to this work as alchemy, that we're transmuting emotions. We're literally turning our pain into power, into purpose, into feeling empowered by it and not scared of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mic drop.
Mic drop. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, we could go on all day. I feel like this is so powerful. Thank you for sharing all of this with everyone from this retreat. And if you guys are watching, make sure to click the link and watch our conversation from last time, because I feel like it also just gave everyone really good foundations for what intuitive eating is, and they can take both of these conversations and really like move forward in their year of you to have that deep connection with their body and fun, loving relationship with food that we all deserve, because food is delicious and it nourishes us, and there's so much beauty in it. And to be able to transition from a painful relationship with food to a healthy one, I can attest is one of the most amazing things that I've ever gone through in my life. Like, to me, it's like it was a miracle,
Yeah, you think to yourself, I'll never get there. I could never see that happening. And then next thing you know, it's not even this huge aha moment. It's this very subtle, like, oh, wow. Like
Yeah.
usually that was so triggering for me and I literally had no response. Cool. Like, fuck yeah. This is where like that's why you do the work for moments like that where you're like, oh hell yeah. Oh
Look where
yeah,
I've
we got this.
come. Yeah. And I'm living life and actually enjoying it and not like
Yeah.
holding on and all the
Yeah.
things that you mentioned earlier. So thank you, Tyler. I love you. Love
I
your
love you,
energy.
Kelly.
This was awesome. Will you share with everyone your freebie?
Yeah. So I actually, the freebie, I was having a hard time deciding what I wanted to do, but essentially it's going to be a 30-minute session with me where we do an introduction to intuitive eating and how to use somatic movement and trauma-informed care to address your relationship to food in your body.
Love it.
So that is a free gift for you if you feel called to explore your relationship with food in your body on a deeper level. Um, then yeah, I would love to support.
Thank you. That's such a generous and amazing gift to give everybody. So take advantage of it, you guys. And thank you again, Tyler. I'll put all your links in the on the landing page, but maybe do you want to tell them your website real quick and your Instagram so they can find you?
Yes. Yeah. So my website is tylerrollingrd.com. And then my Instagram is tyler.rolling.rd.
Perfect. Thank you again. You're the
Thank you,
best.
Kelly. Such a beautiful conversation. Such an honor. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.